Welcome to City Church's On Demand Messages. My name is Josh, and we're so glad you're tuning in whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. In fact, if it's your first time, we'd love to connect with you. You can text NEW to the number on the screen right now. We've got a free gift for you. Also, if you need prayer, we would love to pray with you. We believe that prayer is not our last resort, but it is our first response to what is going on in our lives and the lives of those around us. And so we'd love to join in with you. And so you can text next to the number on the screen. Also, if you'd like to invest financially into the mission of City Church to be a Jesus movement that awakens the soul in the city, you can text next as well to the number on the screen. We believe every Sunday morning when we gather in person and online, and we open up God's Word, that He has something special and specific for every one of us. And so as we lean into this week's message that you're about to watch, we pray that God opens up your heart to whatever He has for you, and we hope that you are encouraged by today's message. Again, if we can do anything for you, please let us know.
I want to say this to you. Merry Christmas. All right, let's try that again. Merry Christmas. Man, I tell you what, isn't it wild to think that we are here, right? This is Christmas season. And as a matter of fact, we've been here for a little bit. It's hard to believe that we're about to jump into another year that doesn't end in 2021. It ends in 22. It's hard to believe that we're here. My name is Warren, and one of the pastors here at City Church, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Whether this is your home, whether this is your first time, your third time, thank you for taking time out of your day and being here at City Church. Over the last few weeks, we have been talking about all I need for Christmas. Now, this is not what we normally hear, right? During Christmas time, we usually, thank you to Mariah Carey, we hear all I want for Christmas, or maybe from your kids, or maybe from your spouse, maybe from your friend. I want this. It's just not our culture, our world to hear all I need for Christmas. And so the last few weeks, Josh has done an incredible job unfolding different aspects, talking about things like hope and peace. And today I get the opportunity to talk to you about something that we all need, and that is joy. Everybody say joy. Come on now, say it, joy. Okay, I like it. As we talk about joy this morning, I think that we put joy together with a relative, and that relative to joy is happiness. We just kind of lump them together. We just figure that joy and happiness, they just kind of are the same thing. They exist together. Joy is interchangeable for happiness, and happiness is interchangeable for joy. In life, if we were just honest with ourselves, if we were honest just about the world that is around us, it's something that people seek after. People want to feel happy. No one sits in a space, wherever it may be, and just say, you know what, today, I just don't want to be happy. That's my purest, honest desire. I don't want to be happy. No, we seek after happiness, and especially in this season that we exist in. It's just kind of an understood thing, I think, if we were honest, that you're just supposed to be happy. There's supposed to be joy. And so I want to share with you just really quick this graph. And so how many of you just love graphs? Like that's your favorite thing in the world? Okay, our math people, I like it. Okay, how many of you hate graphs? All right, how many of you cheated? Oh, no, I'm just kidding. So Google does this really cool thing, and they can show you trends. And so you can go into Google Trends, and you can see what people search. If that's your thing, and you want to see graphs, do it, okay? So this is what happened from 2016 to 2021. So 2021 is not all the way done over here on this side, but we see this trend, and what this is where people search for happiness. So let's be honest, probably on a daily basis, maybe not daily, we probably go to Google and we search something. Like, I don't know something, so where do I go? I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to search it. I'm going to find it. Google has all the answers. Be careful with that, okay? All right, so we find that what happens in Google from 2016 to 2020 is people search for happiness. And so this is things like, what makes me happy? How can I be happy? Where can I find happiness? These are the things that exist in this search. And so we can see this trend from 2016 to 2020. The first trend that we notice is this is not a flat line, okay? This graph is very movie. So it goes up and down, because why? Because happiness is a feeling, right? And our feelings change. The way that we feel, it changes. And so you can tell in and out of space, people are finding happiness, feeling happiness, and then they're like, where do I find it? And so there's another big trend that happens, and I think you probably can see it pretty well. we find that happiness specifically hits in December. Christmas season shows up, and everyone again is making the assumption that this is the happiest time of year. But according to Google, people are looking for it. People are searching for it. Where can I find this happiness that everybody else says exists in this time of year? Because, right, Christmas means happiness. I think it would probably be true to state that in this room, you probably are wanting or looking for happiness. It's just the truth, that feeling of happy. Here's the thing about joy and happiness, though. In our minds, we think that they're both the same because we think they're both a feeling. And as we can tell, you and I are not alone in this search. In this graph, we can see that there's something about these feelings and the way that they shift and the way that they move. But in this season especially, for example, let's just be honest, it just seems to be something that everyone assumes that you have. The songs tell us, right? It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's supposed to be wonderful, right? Have a holly jolly. Jolly, really? Is that the word we're going to use? And then one of my favorites that actually I really hate, but it's still my favorite. Don't ask me. Just come talk to me afterwards. We'll figure it out. But it's that Charlie Brown one with like the really high-pitched like choir kids singing it. Christmas time is here. Right? You know what I'm talking about? Happiness and cheer. Usually when that comes on, I turn it off. I'm like, nope, I can't listen to this. But the songs even tell us, right, that this is the time. Like, the year's almost done. This is the season of happiness and joy. But what if it's not? Right? Because let's be honest, Christmas is busy. I went to Sam's Club on a Monday. It looked like a Black Friday. It's the craziest I've ever seen Sam's in my entire life. I was blown away. Christmas sometimes also brings reminders of those that we've lost. Maybe recently, maybe even a while back, but the fact that they're not in this moment with us is hard. It brings financial stress, right? Because we got to get all the things. They want this, they want that. And so we jump in, and then it causes financial stress. Like, it feels good to purchase it, and then you look at your bank account, and you're like, oh, snap, I'm not happy anymore. There's expectations, right? You got to meet expectations in this season. Your kids are like, well, they got this for Christmas, you know? I always said that I would never be the parent. I have 4 boys. Pray for me. I have 4 boys. No, they're great kids. And I was like, you know, when I'm a parent, I'm never going to be like, well, when I was a kid, you know, like I was like, I'm never going to say that. I say it all the time, you know, right? But your kids, sometimes they're like, well, they got this, I want this. And I'm like, well, when I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones. You know what? We had beepers, you know what that is, a pager? You know, I just swore that I would never do that. But let's be honest, in this season of life, everything is assumed that there's happiness and joy. But what if there isn't? Because I know that sitting in this room, there are stories of hurt, there are stories of pain. And it doesn't matter what your scale is, it changes the way that you feel. Some of you even have people right now who are in your life, and this is the cheeriest time of year. They wear elf hats at least twice a week. They have jingle bells on their feet. If you have those today, I love you, okay? It's okay. But all you want to do is be like, can you just chill a little bit, please? Because honestly, you don't feel the same way. You're looking for something. You're trying to feel something. Let me ask you this question. Do these feelings have the final say in your life? The feelings that you have, do they have the final say in your life, right? Because we're in the season where all of our feelings are supposed to be happy, but meanwhile, your feelings are a thief stealing away any happiness you can muster. So right now, your feelings are taking away any kind of happiness that you can muster. In no way am I here today to belittle your circumstances. I'm not trying to say, well, what you're going through is not a big deal. I'm not here to say that pain is not real. In no way do I believe your pain and your circumstances are not real, but the question is, when they exist, what do we do? How do we find joy? When circumstances exist and they do, what do we do? And I think that many times that we chase. We chase our feelings. We chase the ability to change how I feel. And so what do? We begin to say, what can make me happy? Who can make me happy? How can I be happy? We go to Google. How can I find happiness? And so we chase our feelings. And so my question as we get into today is, what are you chasing? In a season where joy is supposed to exist and maybe it just doesn't, what are you chasing after? You see, because here's the question I want to ask for you. If nothing changed in your current situation, would you be able to find happiness and joy? If nothing changed about your circumstance right now, would you still be able to find joy and happiness? Here's the great part. There's this place in the Bible where all this unfolds. We find this group of people that are going through these circumstances that seem unfathomable, that seem like there's no way they can have any kind of joy. And we find the difference in this space between happiness and the hope of joy and how this group was actually able to find it. And so I want to take you this morning to the book of James. So I'll be in James chapter 1 pretty much all of this morning, and I want to take you to the book of James. And in the book of James, we find the author, James, is writing to Christians. And so he's writing to this group of Christians, and many theologians believe that when he starts this book, he's writing just after a man named Stephen, who was a follower of Jesus, was stoned to death. And so really one of the first martyrs we ever see on the scene in Christianity is this man named Stephen, and he's stoned to death. And so they believe that right here where James starts, he's picking up where now these Christians, the church is being scattered, and they're being persecuted. And so we see this group of Christians, followers of Jesus, who are losing their homes, who are losing their possessions, who are losing their life, and are being scattered to other lands. And so they're dealing with some pretty horrible circumstances. And so this is what we pick up. In the midst of this, this is what James says in James chapter 1, in verse 2. And as we read this, think about the fact that these people are losing their homes, their lives, their possessions. They're losing everything because they've claimed Jesus. It says this in verse 2. Count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you, listen to this, when you meet trials of various kinds. So here's James on the scene, and they're going through these things, and you think that James would be like, all right, guys, this is going to be great. We're going to do this. But then he says, count it joy when you're going through these things. What? How in the world can I possibly count this as joy? Now, my question for you, does anything, as we look at this passage, does anything stand out for you? Probably a few things, right? For some group of people who are going through these circumstances, something stands out. But the first word I want you to notice is the word when. The word when. Now, it would be great, right, if this passage says, count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, if. If. But it doesn't say if, does it? It says when. Because here's the thing. Let's all agree that life is not a matter of if, but when. In this room sits a room full of stories. Your circumstances may have been in the past, your circumstances may be now, your circumstances may come in the future, but it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Today is not about sugarcoating your present circumstances. They are there, they exist. So what do we do in this moment? It's not a matter of when, or a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And how do we maintain or find joy? So let's look at what he says. James chapter 1, verse 2. When you meet trials of various kinds. So he starts with count it joy, and he says when you meet trials of various kinds. And there's this grouping of words that's so important to understand and see, that the word trials here, because I began to study this and I just immediately thought the word trials in this space just meant the circumstances they were dealing with, the persecution and the losing of their homes. But remember, as this group suffers and they lost everything, the word trial actually in its original form is the same word as temptation. So it could mean when you meet temptations of various kinds. See, because here's what the author is trying to help them understand. when we face things that change our happy feelings, right? Have you ever faced things that just change your happy feelings? The temptation comes to be led towards something that we maybe feel will make us happy and help us feel different about our circumstances. You see, what's happening here is the author here is saying, listen, it's not the circumstances that take away joy. It's the response to our circumstances. It's not the circumstances that can take away joy. It's how you respond. Because here's the temptation. The temptation is to do this. The temptation is to say, you know what? These circumstances, Jesus, are not the things that I'm okay with, so I'm going to chase something that makes me feel happy. That is where it changes and it shifts. It moves into a space where no longer am I resting in the joy of Jesus, but I'm chasing happiness. So we chase. We're led to something else, grasping for something that will change the way we feel. Because here's what the verse that follows shows us as being tested. Count it all joy, it says. My brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith. Like these just don't seem like fun words, do they? Trials and testing. These are words that we just look at, but here's what's happening. This faith, it is the good news that Jesus is better than anything and everything. That he is worth far more than gold or silver, that he has a plan better than I could ever imagine, even in the midst of what I'm going through. It is the strong conviction that Jesus is the Savior and Lord. And that's why, as we talk about this verse, it starts with James chapter 1, verse 2. Count it all joy. Count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you meet trials of various kinds. Because when you count it joy, you know what's happening is your faith is growing. It's growing. The testing of your faith is growing. James 1:2, count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you meet trials of various kinds. Now, the word breakdown in this first part is incredible because the phrase count it all joy means to lead or to go before. So to lead with joy. So in the midst of these circumstances, this is what the author James is telling this group of persecuted Christians who have lost their home, they've lost their possessions, they've been scattered to other lands. He's saying, lead with joy. Now, I don't know about you. If you took away my home, if you took away my family, if you took away everything I had, I don't know if I could lead with joy. Can we be real in a moment that this is not easy? This seems hard, doesn't it? But for him to say this must take us and mean something. Listen, I have to say there are moments that I don't count it all joy. I don't lead with joy. You see, maybe today we don't have a doubt of where joy really comes from because I got to be honest with you, I know that joy comes from God. Like, I know that. Maybe we are counting wrong. Because here's the thing, where you fix your eyes determines your joy. Where you fix your eyes, how you lead, what you lean into determines your joy. Remember we said it's not the circumstances, it's how we respond. It's where my eyes are fixed. It's how I follow my feelings. See, if I stay over here and I fix my eyes on Jesus, it's a lot different than if I'm over here chasing the next feeling of happiness. This picture right here is a picture of me and my wife. And yeah, I know, right? I was sore for at least 5 days after that. We're on Arabia Mountain, which is actually not too far from here. If you're looking for a cool spot that's free to go hang out and climb up a massive rock, this is a really cool spot. So this particular day, we had no kids with us, and we just got to hang out together. That was the biggest blessing in the world, and all the parents said amen. And so we'd never been here before. We get there, and we hike up the top of the mountain, and then we're like, let's take a jumpy picture on this big rock on top of this mountain. And then we're trying to put the phone on a rock that's on a rock that's on another rock so we can actually take a picture. And we're just laughing and just enjoying this time and moment. It was a true feeling of happiness in this moment. And so we come down from the mountain and we hike back down to the car and we get in the car. And so, in this moment, there's just this feeling of, this is just so nice and refreshing. And then, it's good to check on your kids every once in a while, right? It's just a good thing to do. And so for some reason, we're like, let's get out our stuff and let's check our kids' grades. stupid. So we get it out, and, my kids are, they do pretty great in school, but this particular instance, one of my kids got a 10 on a 10. Just in case you're wondering, it's out of 100, if you're trying to figure out, it wasn't a 10 out of 10, it was a 10 out of 100. And so in that moment, it's something small, right? But the circumstance in that moment changed the way I felt. I went from, wow, this is the best day ever, to, oh my gosh, I stink as a parent. And no longer did the feeling of happiness exist. But here's the thing, if we chase our feelings, our feelings are always going to let us down. Because the thing that we're chasing is going to let us down. I love my wife to death. I love her so much. But my wife can never provide the true joy that I really need. She never will. And if I put that expectation on her, it's not fair to her. Because there's only one that can provide the joy that I need. My marriage can be incredible, more incredible, if that's the joy that I start with. See, I think that we count it wrong. Count it all joy, but instead we step over here in our feelings, right? And we chase. Joy is not dependent on your circumstances. It dwells where Jesus is. But I think instead of leading with Jesus, we're tempted to lead with our circumstances. We're tempted to see our circumstances first. And when we lead with circumstances, we will always rely on our feelings. We always will say, the only way this will be better is if I feel this. And so if we want to feel, we respond by chasing. And this is where joy and happiness are separate. Beginning of this, we talked about the fact that we group these two words together. Joy is happiness. Happiness is joy. But joy is different. You see, joy is not something we chase. Joy is something we receive. You don't have to chase it. This morning, if you're here and you're a follower of Jesus, you've accepted Jesus, guess what? You received it already. You haven't. It's there, but what do we do instead of standing in it? We chase. Joy is not something we have to chase. We've already received it. We can focus on what we don't understand, which is so easy to do. Does anybody in here just like to figure things out? Is anybody like that person? I'm the guy that's sitting, well, we don't have malls, but if we did, okay? I'm the guy that would sit in the mall and I'm watching people and I'm trying to analyze and trying to figure out, okay, that's what's going on there. My wife sometimes is you got to quit. You got to stop. What are you doing? I just want to figure out what's going on. And here's the thing, I think that we all are that way, especially in our circumstances. We can focus on what we don't understand, or we can find joy in the one who does understand. It changes everything. Because we want to focus on what we don't understand instead of focusing on the one who does understand. I want you to see now this whole passage together. James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4. It says, "Count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you meet trials of various kinds." And so here's James again saying, listen, you're going through all this stuff, but you can count it as joy, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. That word means that you can have patience, that you can endure, that you can make it through. And then what happens is, as this grows, as steadfastness has its full effect, here's what happens. You become to a point where you're perfect, complete, and lacking in nothing. And those words, I know you're ooh, I can be perfect. That word perfect means the same thing as the next word, complete. Lacking in nothing means the same thing, complete, enough. And I think it's incredible that the author comes to the end of this, and he says these three words, he says them right in a row. He says, when we stand in the joy of Jesus, even in our circumstances, we begin to endure, and it brings us to a place where we're complete and we need nothing. Can I ask you a question? If you felt complete, do you feel like your joy would actually be whole? It shifts, right? It changes when I sit in a space and I know that I need nothing but Jesus. See, when we set the joy of Christ at the forefront, we develop the ability to endure, and it leads us to those last words of perfect, complete, lacking nothing. You see, the joy is leading us to something better. It's working something out, because here's the thing. When you believe that Jesus and his plan for you is good, and that's not easy, is it? But when you believe that Jesus and his plan for you is good, you can have joy in whatever he sets before you, because you only need Jesus. Listen, I know in this room there's so much. There's things and stories that I could never fathom. There's so many spaces and places, but can I encourage you right now that Jesus is with you? And the sorrow that you feel is real, but the joy that exists is also real. Because when you feel uncertain, God is not. When you feel afraid, God is not. When you feel like you're at a breaking point, God is not. When you feel lost, God is not. When you feel like there's no joy, God is joy. See, this is how you find joy in the next, by resting in the knowledge that God is bigger. And He is with you every step of the way. And only His joy can make you complete. Because here's what Jesus says. In John chapter 15, I love these words. Jesus speaking, and He says this in John 15. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. And so the you is you. This morning, whether you're a follower of Jesus or whether you're not, He loves you. You can put your name there. And then He says this, abide in my love. Abide. The word means to remain. If you keep my commandments, right, and Jesus talks about these, to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. He says, if you keep my commandments, if you do these things, you will abide in my love. Just as I have kept my Father's commandments and I abide in His love. And this is what He says. These things have I spoken to you that my joy may be in you. And that your joy may be full. So how do I have a joy that's full? Do I come and do I chase my feelings? Listen, if you chase, you'll never stop. You'll never, ever stop. Because your feelings are going to change, right? We watched as that graph went up and down and up and down. But if I remain, if I abide, then I have a joy that is full. Because here's what Jesus says in that passage. He says, my joy may be in you and your joy may be full. Here's the joy that is in us. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 through 2. Let us run with endurance. You ever feel like you're running a race in life? You're just tired. Maybe even more so in this season than any other season. 3 of my boys are playing basketball right now. 2 Saturdays ago, we had 4 basketball games. I got done at the end of the day, and I was like, oh, my goodness, what just happened? Like, I don't even remember how I got home. Like, it was just that crazy of a day. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking, here it is again, where I fix my eyes, where I abide, where I remain, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before Him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand, the throne of God. I want you to catch this right here. Who for the joy that was set before Him, what did He do? He endured the cross. Can I tell you something for a moment? That joy that existed, you're a part of that. You, every person in this room, you are a part of that joy. He came and that joy existed to glorify His Father, and that meant to mend the relationship that was broken by sin, mend the relationship between you and God. Jesus led with joy. He counted you and me. He felt so much pain in that moment on the cross, yet He endured because of the joy that was set before Him. And can I just tell you today that you're a part of Jesus' joy? Look to the one who found joy in you for joy. Because here's the thing. We often miss out on joy. We often miss out on joy because we're looking for it in a feeling instead of looking for it in Jesus. Can I ask you this question today? Where are you looking? Where are you looking? Are you here on this side and chasing with all your might, hoping that something will make you happy? Because I think 2 things exist in this chasing space. Things and people. We're chasing something, hoping that someone, or we're chasing things. And sometimes the things that we chase can be financial. Sometimes they can be things that alter how we feel. They can be drugs or alcohol. They could be social media. Maybe I could just feel joy in this moment if I could just binge something on Netflix. Like maybe something will make me feel. But can we be honest? Just ask yourself this question. Does it last? Does it? I got to be real with you. I love to fish. So if you got a pond in your backyard, no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, I love to fish. And if you talk to my boys, we will literally be in the car and pass a ditch or a creek, and we will pull over. And we will fish in it, or we will wade through it. I know, it might be disgusting, but I've caught the biggest fish I've ever caught behind a gas station, if that tells you anything. I love to fish. And I will not lie to you, there have been moments in my life where I just am hitting a wall. And I just want to feel happiness. And so I'll go fish. And I'll sometimes catch something, and it's just good and happy and fun. But then what happens when I get home? The feelings all come back. But I've learned that if I abide and I rest in who Jesus is, that joy is unshakable. It doesn't change my circumstances. It doesn't even change how I feel, but it gives me a hope that there's joy in who Jesus is. Count it all joy is what the author says. So what are you chasing after? Can I tell you today that you can find joy in who Jesus is?